In every empire, behind every throne, and in the shadow of every conquest lies a choice: indulge or withhold. Feed the hunger of the flesh and risk being ruled by it, or starve it and let that hunger sharpen the sword of your ambition. Modern men are being told to seek satisfaction, to treat pleasure as a reward and a right. But history tells another story. The great men, the emperors, conquerors, warlords, and statesmen, did not ascend by being satisfied. They rose because they were starved, not just for power or wealth, but starved erotically. And they refused to be distracted by softness when the world required steel. Erotic starvation is not weakness, it is strategy. It is the self-imposed famine that turns desire inward, where it ferments into power, control, and vision. And no man embodied this cold principle more clearly than Cesare Borgia. Born into corruption, raised in decadence, and surrounded by indulgence, Borgia was forged in fire. As the son of Pope Alexander VI, he grew up in a world where temptation walked the halls in silk robes and whispered seduction in Latin tongues. But unlike other princes who lost themselves in women, wine, and idle lust, Borgia understood the value of withholding. To indulge recklessly is to play with poison. He learned early that lust was a weapon, not only in how it could be wielded against others, but in how it could be used to seduce, disarm, and ultimately destroy a man from the inside out. And so he developed what few powerful men ever master: restraint. Women were not to be worshipped or feared. They were not demons nor goddesses. They were tools, allies, sometimes even muses, but never distractions. Borgia calculated his every move like a war general in bed and on the battlefield. He didn't suppress his sexuality out of fear. He disciplined it into something potent, something he could direct like a blade. Borgia did not become feared because he chased women. He became feared because he didn't. His enemies were predictable, undone by affairs, entangled in jealousies, weakened by the softness that crept in after too much pleasure. But Borgia weaponized mystery. His detachment made him magnetic. His silence made others speak more than they should. And his refusal to chase made him more irresistible than any poet could describe. Women were drawn to him not because he gave, but because he withheld. He did not seek validation. He projected dominance through control, and in doing so, he bent feminine energy to orbit around him. The hunger he carried, that erotic starvation, it didn't decay him. It electrified him. He walked into rooms with tension burning in his gaze, ambition coiled beneath his cloak, and an energy that no one could quite name, but all could feel. That is the power of erotic discipline. This is not celibacy in the religious sense. Borgia was not a monk, but he was a tactician. He didn't let desire dictate terms. He let desire fuel strategy. And this distinction is everything. Erotic starvation is not repression. It's redirection. It's choosing to transmute what weak men spill frivolously into something that elevates you above the noise. The same energy that can be wasted in a night can also be channeled into a campaign, a business, a throne. Most men never learn this. They remain slaves to their appetites, and in doing so, they remain unfit to rule. Borgia, like Alexander before him, knew that conquest begins first in the mirror. If a man cannot conquer his own urges, he will be conquered by the first woman who understands them better than he does. And there are many. Erotic starvation builds emperors because it creates the space for vision. Lust clouds judgment. It dulls the edge of your will. It makes you reactive, desperate, emotional. But when starved, not ignored, not denied, but harnessed, that same lust becomes rocket fuel. It becomes charisma, presence, intensity. It becomes that aura men try to fake and women can smell. When you starve the part of you that begs, that wants, that craves, what remains is pure willpower. Cesare Borgia didn't win because he was born into power. He won because he refused to let pleasure own him. He saw what it did to other men, how it turned kings into clowns, commanders into cowards, philosophers into fools, and he chose differently. He chose to dominate his inner world before attempting to rule the outer one. The men who last, who rise, rule, and carve their names into stone, are not the ones who chase women. They are the ones women chase and yet remain untouched by the chase. Erotic starvation is not about punishment. It is about presence. It is about standing so firmly in your purpose that nothing, not beauty, not lust, not temptation, can pull you from the path. In Borgia's time, the battlefield was filled with swords and spies. In ours, the battlefield is dopamine, digital thirst traps, and emotional addiction. But the lesson remains unchanged: withhold and rise, or indulge and fall. Cesare Borgia chose the former, and history remembers him not as a saint, but as a storm. Cesare Borgia wasn't a man of warm romance or boyish infatuation. He was cold, calculated, a strategist of the human soul, especially the feminine one. Where other men saw beauty, he saw leverage. Where others saw love, he saw liability. And yet, this detached presence made him irresistible. Because in the world of seduction, nothing is more dangerous or alluring than a man who does not need. Borgia understood something few men ever grasp, that women are never drawn to desperation, but to tension. Erotic energy unspent doesn't fade. It builds, it smolders. And Borgia kept that fire behind his eyes, not at the tip of his fingers. He never gave more than he planned to, never revealed more than he wanted to. And because he mastered that erotic restraint, he became a myth inside the minds of others, especially women. He didn't fear women. He understood them. He knew their power, their influence, their ability to penetrate the minds of kings and dissolve entire empires from behind closed doors. But he also knew their need for leadership, dominance, and direction. And so he gave them something few men could, a frame they couldn't move. Borgia was not anti-woman. He was simply immune to their emotional manipulation. And that made him lethal, because the man who cannot be seduced is a man who cannot be owned. He might enjoy, he might engage, but his soul remains untouched. This is the essence of the Borgia Code: charm without surrender, connection without enslavement, seduction without sacrifice. Most men today believe their worth is tied to their ability to attract and keep a woman. But Borgia believed the opposite, that a man's value is rooted in his ability to choose when, if, and how to engage. Not from fear, not from bitterness, but from strength. Because erotic starvation is not weakness, it's power in reserve. It's the nuclear energy a man holds within him that gives his words weight, his stare depth, and his presence gravity. Borgia could command rooms without speaking. His tension spoke louder than words. And women, even when they were the ones attempting to seduce him, found themselves caught in his storm rather than the other way around. Contrast that with the men who fell from power, those undone by jealous wives, scandalous affairs, and bedroom betrayals. History is littered with kings who lost kingdoms over women. Borgia took note. He didn't let lust cloud his politics, didn't let his appetite blind his ambition. He remained emotionally detached, yet always observant. That's what made him dangerous. He could enter a room, charm a queen, and still walk away unaffected. He could use desire without being used by it. He was a seducer, but never seduced. And here lies the lesson for modern men. If you want to reclaim your edge, reclaim your discipline. In a world where pleasure is immediate, where validation is sold by the pixel, the man who can delay, deny, and direct his erotic energy becomes a god among addicts. Erotic starvation is not about self-hatred or monkhood. It's about power conservation. It's about choosing impact over indulgence. You don't have to abandon women, but you must abandon the need for them. Because the second you need, you become predictable, reactive, soft. And no empire is built on softness. So starve not out of scarcity, but out of strength. Let that hunger live in your body and fuel your mission. Let it pour into your work, your leadership, your strategy. Women will follow, not because you chase, but because they sense something rare in you, something withheld, something controlled. That's the Borgia effect. Mystery, restraint, magnetism. It's not about becoming less masculine. It's about becoming so masculine that you no longer need to prove it. In the end, legacy is not built by men who chase their cravings. Legacy is carved by men who mastered them. Cesare Borgia chose to be feared rather than flattered, followed rather than fawned over. He built his name on tension, power, and control, not indulgence. And that's why centuries later, we still speak his name. Not as a lover, but as an emperor of influence. Let the modern man take note. Build the empire. Women will orbit the fire, but never feed it. That is the way of the undeceived. That is the way of Borgia. Thus remember, we are indeceptor. What if everything you chase is what's weakening you? What if pleasure isn't reward, but a trap? And what if desire itself was the enemy all along? Death of desire, the Stoic's path to cold clarity. This is not a guide. This is not self-help. This is war. Kill the need, master the mind.